Again, welcome to this session. So as I mentioned, I'm going to present the New South Wales COVID Regional Community Support Program that FtripleR is administering on behalf of Resilience New South Wales. And just to welcome you all, just wanted to acknowledge the country that everyone is on. We are all on different country, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people. So who is FtripleR? So some of you may have had some contact or knowledge of FtripleR, some of you may not have. So FtripleR, which is the Foundation for Regional Rural Renewal, we're the only national foundation that really specifically focuses on supporting regional, remote and rural Australia. We do that, we support these communities through collecting money or support from government, philanthropic groups, community groups, businesses and other sources of funding. And then we match that funding and funnel it through to community groups to support the needs that they have on the ground. So the key differences that FtripleR sort of we use with our granting programs and what we offer is that we have an approach to grant making that we believe that we know that the community knows best and what they need to do in there, but they know what is needed on the ground. We have a strong level of understanding what it's like to be in a rural regional community. Most of our staff live in rural regional communities across Australia, and we know that the community knows best. We try really hard to make it as easy as possible in all the stages of the granting process. So the application, we try to make sure that our assessment turnaround time is as short as possible, and that all throughout the application stage of the granting process, but also once if you've received a grant and when you're reporting, you're able to contact us and ask us questions. We're really happy to talk to anyone and ask questions throughout any stage of the granting process. So just talking about the program we're going to talk about today. So this is a specific program that is provided by the New South Wales government, and it's through the Resilience New South Wales, so the COVID Regional Community Support Program. So this program is based on basically supporting community groups who have been impacted by COVID by many ways, and understanding that those communities groups have been stepped up and taken a lot more on because of the impacts of COVID, and are maybe having to stretch further than they have before in the past. And they're doing things differently or more of what they were doing, and that this program is to try and help them, support them with what they actually need. So this program has two streams. The first stream has already closed, and that stream was a reimbursement for community groups who went out and delivered food and personal care hampers to people who are in COVID lockdown situations late last year and early this year. So that program was a direct financial support to those groups to acknowledge that they had to spend money out of their own pockets because of a state government health order to support to reduce the spread of COVID. But the stream that we're going to talk about today is the capacity building stream. So it's the second part of this program, and it's actually the larger part and larger amount of funding. So it's the capacity building stream. And so this stream is all about building the capacity within the groups who have been working above and beyond. It's to build those organisations' capacity to support their communities, to keep supporting those communities and their own organisation to help them with the needs that are just keep coming through COVID and that keep changing. So it's really to help those groups to make sure that they can still stay supporting their communities, and they can maybe potentially upscale or adjust and adapt to any other stresses or other potential disasters that may come. So some of the details about this stream, if you haven't seen it on our webpage, so on our landing page, we have all of this information. So this stream, the capacity building stream, we've got grants of up to 50,000 available. And there's a total funding pool of 700,000 available across the state. So the applications are now open. They opened on the 29th of March, and they close on the 26th of May. So you've got about 3 weeks. And when they close on the 26th of May, we will assess those applications, and the successful and unsuccessful applicants will be notified in August. So these projects will have 12 months to deliver those projects. So to be eligible for this stream, it's any organisation within rural, regional, remote New South Wales is eligible. So those groups, any group that is within Metro Sydney is not eligible. So even if a group has been, if their legal organisation is actually based in the Metro Sydney area, and that excludes Blue Mountains, Central Coast, and City of Hawkesbury, Wallandilly Shire, those shires are actually eligible. But any group that's actually based in Metro Sydney but have been supporting regional, rural, remote communities are not eligible. So that the organisations have to be based in regional, rural, and remote New South Wales. And the reason for that is because community groups and organisations based in regional, rural, and remote New South Wales have less opportunity to attract volunteers. They have less opportunity to raise funds compared to a business or an organisation that's actually physically located in Metro Sydney. So to be eligible, obviously have to be in that location, but all you need to have is to be a community group that has an ABN or an incorporation certificate, and so they can be a not-for-profit group, a community group, or a volunteer-based group. So in the project to be eligible, those organisations or the project, you have to demonstrate that your project provides ongoing services to affected community members, or that your project builds resilience within your community to mitigate and respond to the pandemic and future disasters, or that your project builds the capacity in the applicants in your organisation or your group to deliver services in your community. And also keeping in mind that this program that I'm talking about now is COVID related. So when you're thinking of your projects, keep it with the lens that it's what you're doing in this project is based on the impacts of COVID. So when we talk about capacity building, there's lots of different ways of explaining capacity building. So a simple way that we thought of to explain it for this program is that capacity building and what we're funding is really sustainability of these organisations. So the community groups, volunteer-based groups, and not-for-profit organisations who have, had to take on a lot. This grant is really to make sure that these organisations stay there, keep operating, and that they can keep operating sustainably. So when you're thinking of projects or things that you'd like to get funded for this application, you can ask the questions, well, what do you do, and what do you need to keep going to do what you're doing currently? Do you need something to keep doing more of what you're doing? Is there something that you need to purchase? Is there something that you need more people or resources that you need to keep doing what you're actually doing? Or are you doing new things that you didn't do before, but you think you're going to keep doing and you need something to make that happen? So there are some questions to try and help you think about, well, is the project that I'm going to ask for, is it really capacity building? So we've got some example projects and project types, and I'll give some actual real things that you could possibly apply for as just examples to get you thinking. Some of the examples projects could be about increasing capacity and capability of a local community organisation to support preparedness and recovery from the impacts of COVID. So that could be for your community group, if you know that you're going to get a lot more requests of your service, then you could possibly look at purchasing some sort of scheduling software, or you could get some training to support your organisation to help you with rostering on staff or even volunteers. Other examples, if you're looking at developing organisational skills and knowledge so that they have the confidence to address community needs, you could maybe bring in some external support to help with training. We've seen a lot of requests at FtripleR lately around COVID of that community groups need mental health training for their own staff and also for community groups, but skilling up your staff in the ability to deal with difficult customers or to deal with their own staff's mental health. Bringing people and community organisations together in partnership or collaboration. We could fund things that allow you to have an event where you can bring community groups to workshop, to create new partnerships. You could bring in a consultant to help foster new relationships within your community. We can also fund things like enhancing the places where communities gather to receive support or services, and that can be any sort of community space. It can be within your own organisation, your own building, but it could be a community space that community congregate in, and that can be whether it's for building a community garden, it could be improving the playground, it could be improving a shelter space outside of your organisation where communities sit and wait to come into your building. So any infrastructure, we can fund infrastructure. We can also fund people. So if the need that you've found is that you're really struggling to with the current staff that you have, and you need probably a part-time person to come in and just take the load of volunteer management or any gap that you can see, we can fund a temporary person or a person for 12 months. What you would need to show us is that you have a plan of how that role, if it's going to continue, how you would continue that, or if it's just a 12-month thing, then you just have to let us know that that role was just really for a 12-month period to get over a bump in whatever it was you needed. Other things that we could support for to help your communities to recover from COVID, social isolation has been a big thing. So could be events. So it could be supporting an event that normally happens and you could expand it and focus, put an extra element to it. Or it could be a new event that your organisation can provide for your community to connect them or to help them access new skills. You can bring in support, local support people, or just something for fun, give them some fun activity. We can fund software and IT improvements as well, so to help you increase access, digital access and inclusion with capital items, and we can also fund ongoing costs. So if you have ongoing costs that you just need a bit of help with, so insurances, so we can fund up to 50% of the total of your grant on your own to support you with ongoing costs that you have to keep your business as usual, but we can't support the whole 50%, the whole 100% of that grant. So there'll have to be something else in there as well. So you can always ask us a question. If you're going through and designing a project and you're not sure, you can always ring us and we can provide you information. Just a couple of other little things. You can also, things to think about that you may want to do, excuse me, as a project. Increasing inclusion in your area to your building. Maybe you would like to include disability access. Maybe building a ramp, maybe improving the doorways so that the doors opening and closing is suitable to allow all abilities to enter your building. And just some other things that I had was you can also, if you're struggling with volunteers, projects that we could fund is bringing purchase of online volunteer management systems, or even training resources. You can bring in training resources for your volunteers to upskill them. There's also celebration of your volunteers. You could provide an event for your existing volunteers to encourage, create like a fun day where they can enjoy being a volunteer instead of it being quite, always hard work. And those sorts of things also help you attract volunteers. If the volunteers you have sort of start telling others that our organisation actually provides fun things for us, as well as asking us to do the other hard things. So they're just some examples to get you thinking. So what I'll do now is I'm going to navigate to our webpage, and I will show you where to find our this grant on our webpage, and then I'll do a run through of the grant application and show you some of and just run through some tips of how to best answer those questions. So I'll just switch my screens. So, Janelle, can you confirm that you can see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Can you confirm you can see the web page?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So this is our FtripleR homepage. So to find all of our funding, there are two places. You can find them under the funding tab, or you can scroll down and find them on seeking funding. And that'll ask you a few questions to try and nail down the right funding program. So FtripleR has a number of funding programs, and we'll find this, the Resilience New South Wales capacity building program under disaster grants. There we go. So scroll down, you'll see that we have quite a number of disaster grants open now. And the resilience one is at the bottom. This is our landing page, and it has all the information about the grant. And one thing with FtripleR is we try to keep everything that we do the same. So the grant application I'm going to show you now is the same template for every grant every grant that you'd apply for FtripleR. So it'll ask you pretty much the same questions. So on our landing page, we have some information under these tabs. So if you have concerns about whether you're eligible, there's lots of information. You can go through those drop downs. This gathering information, this tab will give you some tips about how to best answer some of the questions and the things that you need to collect before you apply to the grant. And then to apply, you click on Apply Now, and you scroll down. There's a checklist to ask you if you've done all those things to make it easier for you to apply to the grant. And then we apply now. And now this is the landing page where you'll have to, if you have an account with us already, it'll show there, but if you don't, you just click here and you set up an account. And that'll be your organisation's account for every FtripleR grant that you apply for. So this is the grant page that we start off with. So the first questions that will be asked is to fill in your organisational details. So it asks about, we have two levels. So there's a legal organisation. So that's just the organisation who's applying. But if you're applying on behalf of another organisation who's going to deliver it, it's also, another word is called auspicing. then there's another box you can fill it out. But if you're applying as your organisation and you're going to deliver the project, then you just complete the legal organisation. So fill in all of your organisational information, and then the head of the organisation is the one that we will be contacting. The organisation project contact will be the one that will contact about this application, not about the delivery of the project. It's just about all the questions we have if we need to come back to you about the application you have. In this organisation overview, this really helps us get an understanding of who you are. So if you can sort of put in information in this, that would really help. So as I mentioned earlier, so if you're, as an organisation, are going to support another organisation to deliver the project, then they fill in this delivery organisation section. So under the next bit you'll need to do is a project information. So give us put in a project title, just explaining what your project is. It doesn't have to be snappy or really, exciting. Sometimes those ones are fun to read, but just any project title that really explains what it is great. And a project summary is probably best to do your project summary last. So another really good tip that most, pretty much all grant writers do is you do write your application on a Word document if you're working in a team, and then go back and put it into the online site at the last moment. That always helps with if you need someone else to check it. It also means that if you're applying 10 minutes before the program closes, it gives you time to do that. And now we're heading into the main questions. So the questions that we ask is what, why, when, and where and how. So with the what, so what we're actually looking here is for you to really explain what your project is about. So what are you actually going to do? And what are the funds going to pay for? So that can be as simple as, just telling us the project of what you're going to do, and then telling us, we're going to pay for volunteer management training. We're going to support our community, increasing their social connection. So it's really explaining to us about the key activities that you're going to do. And then the why. This is really the need. So why does your project need to happen? What's happening in your organisation or in your community that is a problem, or there's something that you need to solve. So this is where you can explain what's really happening in your local community. And what really helps with this is if you can supply information about your local area. So state level stats are interesting, it's good to know, but really if you can tell us what's really happening in your community, that really helps. It helps us get an idea of why this project is needed over other projects. And you can also, we have spaces to attach lots of support material to sort of help you explain the need of your project. Letters of support really help us understand that the community really needs this project. And letters of support are really also helpful for us to understand you as an organisation. So when's the project going to happen? Give us some rough dates and it helps us make sure that you're going to be able to complete the project in time. And then the where. So where is your project going to happen? So in what towns, the population, and this helps us understand a bit more about your town and your area as well. And then we ask for local government areas. That helps us understand, I guess, at a higher level where you are. And then this question about briefly describing your organisation and also your community. where your project's going to occur. So this helps us understand you as an organisation and why you need this project, and also what's happening in your community. So when you fill this question in, keep the lens of COVID. So as I said, this is a COVID funding project. So whenever you're writing your responses, sort of always make sure that you iterate why this project is needed and what impact COVID had to that need. And then the who's going to benefit from the project and who's going to be involved. So are the benefits just going to be to the volunteers for your organisation, or is it going to be for your broader community? Is it going to be a specific group? Is it for just the youth in your area, or is it for a specific community in your area? So just let us know. And if you're actually partnering with other groups or other community members, community organisations, you can let us know as well. And if you can, you don't have to. If you've got an idea of the approximate number of people who will directly benefit, you can put that in. But that can also be quite subjective. So don't spend too much time worrying about that one. And under these questions, all these questions are really just a prompt to help you answer that question. And then we've just got some other checks, questions that we have. And this box about how will your project benefit the community, we suggest that everyone just clicks building organisational capacity. It can be, you can click others, but it'll only allow you to click one. And this is really probably for our purposes. And again, this question here about identifying the primary outcomes, you can tick up to 3. This is again sort of helping us as FtripleR report back to Resilience New South Wales, but also understanding what communities are really applying for. So it doesn't have any weighting on your assessment. So if you don't spend too much time figuring out which box to click. And then this question about project outcomes. So outcomes really are what's the goal of your project and what's going to happen when this project's delivered. How is the community or the organisation going to look differently after this project's delivered? So those questions there about how will your project build your organisational capacity, what will be achieved and what will be different, they're just sort of prompters to help you answer this question. So every application always has a project budget, and so FtripleR, we've tried to keep a project budget as simple as possible. So if your project is, if you're asking just for funds to do this project and it's not bringing in other funds, then that's okay. We don't ask for any match funding at all in your project. You don't have to have in-kind time or anything as well. You won't get marked down or pushed down the line of funding if you don't have any of those things. But if you do have them, it's always good to, good to put them into these boxes. So if you've got any other cash contributions from other sources, you can put them in, but you don't have to if you don't have any. And that can be other grants. If you've got a bigger project and you want something to assist that project and you're asking us for some funds, then to support another project you've already got going that you've got funds for, you can put that in. That gives us an idea of what the funds are going to. So all we ask for the expenditure items are just to detail really simply what it is you're asking for and then the cost. And then if you have any in-kind contributions, so if you've got people who are going to support the project, but you're not going to provide funding for them, that's called an in-kind contribution. And we have a dollar figure that you can cost that out at which is $41 per hour. So if you've got staff or volunteers or others who are going to support the project, but there's no funding remuneration, you can put that in, and that provides us an idea of the level of support your project has. But as I said, if you don't have any of that, it doesn't mark you down, or you don't have to have it to apply to this program. And then if you've got, if you're purchasing things or if you're bringing in a consultant, we ask for you, if possible, if you can provide a quote for any items over $1,000, and that helps us get an idea that you've actually gone out and sourced those things, or you know what you want. So if you can attach those, that's always useful. And then if you are one of those organizations, so if you're a legal organization who is working with another group who are actually the delivery organization, and as I said earlier, another word for that is auspicing, then you can, then that the head of the organization needs to attach a letter of support here. So this one is only applicable if you've got a delivery organization. And if you don't know, if you're confused about that, just always call us and we can talk you through it. So we ask for some financial information about your organization, and this just helps us get an idea of whether you're able to deliver the project. We're not assessing your financial information on any other way other than just whether you're able to deliver the project. So if you're able to attach audited financials, if you have them, or if you don't, then the most recent 12-month income and expenditure statement. And if there's any things in those documents that you wanted to point out, you can let us know. Sometimes organisations have received a large grant and it can adjust their income and expenditure statements, so you can always point that out if you wanted to let us know. And support materials, if you've got any support materials, letters of support, as I mentioned, are great. If there's any community surveys, if you've got any information to support the claims that you've made, you can always attach them there, photos, whatever, media clips. That really helps us to get an understanding and a backgrounding of your project. And then that's it. So then you just submit the application, and then we'll assess it. And as we're assessing your application, and if we notice that you're missing something, we will come back and ask you if we have the time, unless we're overloaded with a lot of applications. But we do try to assist community groups and keep that relationship going to try and help them. But we understand that people are busy and you may have unintentionally forgotten to attach something, so we'll try and request it if we can. So I'll just quickly switch back to the presentation and just finish with some grant seeking tips. Just a minute. And Janelle, can you see that?
No.
Is that presentation
yes.
show?
Yep.
Okay,
that's great.
Excellent, thank you. Just some grant seeking tips. The best tip of all for any grant application or FtripleR, anyone, is always to plan your project first. So lots of community groups, I've seen it many times when community groups see a grant application, see a grant program and there's funding available, they get excited and they just dive in and develop a project, put all that information into the application, hit send, and great. But what you really need to do is to plan your project to make sure that you understand what it is you want to do. You've got to think through the specifics of your project, but most importantly is make sure others in your organization are on board. So if you're developing a project, make sure you've got authority to go ahead and apply for it. Make sure you've run your project past, if you've got financial people in your organization or anyone in your organization can help you with your budget, make sure that you can actually cover the project if there's any other costs. and make sure that your community's on board. Make sure that the project that you're doing is actually what the community would like and is that they would be excited about. So make sure that the ideas consider the wider community if possible, and that they would be potentially enthusiastic about your project. Another thing you can consider when you're developing a project is the project that you're doing, can you connect with other groups that have similar ideas or interests to support or strengthen your project idea? And as I said, letters of support show us that the community is engaged in your project. So that's a really good way of also connecting with groups to say, we need a letter of support. Are you happy to write one? And then it opens an opportunity to have a conversation about your project and to get their ideas as well. Some tips about writing your application. So we went through the application form, but the other tips to make sure that you write a great application. First thing is look at the guidelines. So they were on the landing page. Make sure that your project actually fits the guidelines. There's some things in there, like I mentioned, that if you're applying for capital items or ongoing business as usual costs, then you can only apply for 50% of your project costs. So things like that, make sure you know that before you start to fill in your application form. Follow the instructions. There's some word limits, but there's not many word limits. So it's not a really deal breaker. Make sure you allow plenty of time to write the application. And as I said, it's always best to do it on a Word document first. Make sure that you've got time to source quotes and the financial information, letters of support, looking for the documents you want to attach. Make sure you've got them ready to go when you're in the online portal. Make sure your budget adds up correctly. Make sure that that all the items in your budget have the correct cost, and that the tally is equal to the project total. And then really tell, as you're going through, and the who, what, why questions do help you tell those stories, but tell a compelling story about why the project is important to your community and to your organisation. And some other hot tips. So grant makers, we assess what we have at hand. So we don't always have time to chase things up. As I said, we try to, but we don't always have time to. So the best thing is to provide what you can in the application. If you've hit send and then you realize, oh, I forgot to attach something, you can email that through to us and we can attach it for you. But as I said, through the whole process, we're always available to answer questions. If you have trouble accessing the online portal or you have questions at any stage, you can always call us or email us. Just some other quick tips. Use simple language. Assume that the reader knows nothing about your organisation, your project or your community. Avoid technical language. Acronyms are always a good one. So make sure you spell them out. When you make claims, use evidence to support them. So use facts and not opinions. We do love a quote. If you've got a great quote from a community in their words, we really love to hear that as well. And then a really good tip is just to make it clear how you're going to use the requested funds. So what is it that we are actually paying for? And so another good tip as well, we have a lot of really good grant seeking resources. So you can share this with your communities as well. So on our webpage, if you go to our landing page, on our homepage, under the funding tip, I think it's second down, there's the whole page which is called Grant Seeking Resources. And we have a number of different resources, videos, all sorts of things about how to create a budget, how to understand what communities need, how to report. There's a wealth of resources that you can point your communities to.